Hi, my name is Richard Miller and I'll be taking you through the activities you will need to undertake to assemble your team and then manage it through the project. The assumption is that you've submitted your application and are now either ready to deliver the project or are waiting for confirmation of funding. In either case, there are things you should be doing now to prepare for project delivery that will save you a lot of pain and effort later. These are the topics we will cover, grouped into assembling the team and managing the team. When this was a live webinar, we had 2 breaks for discussions, which are not needed in this recording. Whether waiting for confirmation of funding or ready to go, it's useful to start planning your team and how you will work with them. There is a very helpful toolkit available in the Knowledge Hub of the Social Housing Retrofit website. It covers all aspects of team forming and skills and can go into more detail than I have time for here. It is one of a whole series of toolkits that cover most of the major stages of a retrofit project. So the question we're dealing with today is essentially, will my team be up to the job? Do I have all the skills I'm going to need? How will I fill the gaps? Will they work well together? And what can I do to head off potential problems? This is important because these are complicated projects. Delivered at speed, no matter how much time you have, it will never feel enough. And with quite a few specific rules you must follow. The rules of the SHGF competition, subsidy rules, procurement rules, and so on. So what are the jobs that need to be done? This chart is from the Retrofit Project Overview Toolkit and shows the key stages of a project. This is a high-level view of the main tasks, but you will need more detail, and detail that's specific to your project, organization, and if you're in one, your consortium. The Team Toolkit has a starter list of roles and tasks in an appendix. It covers most of the key issues, but it's not a complete list. You will have to augment it. These are the basic steps for doing your skills audit and getting your team together. First of all, you have to define the roles and tasks. What jobs need doing for your project? Start with the tasks listed in the Team Toolkit appendix and build on that. Then you map the people you have available to the task. Do you have people with the right skills and capabilities? But also, do they have the capacity? Presumably, most of these people have full-time jobs already. So how are you going to manage that? How are you going to make them available for those tasks? Having gone through that process of mapping, identify the gaps in coverage. Which tasks have no one to cover them? Where are the gaps? And then how will you bridge the gaps? Do you have staff already, or will you train, recruit, or outsource? And when you've done all that and got your team together, all you have to do is manage the team through the project. That's easy. Of course, I'm kidding. So job mapping, list all the jobs, tasks, and roles and see if you can put a name against each one. Do they have the right skills, capability, and capacity? And then think about the gaps and how to bridge them. Once you've identified the gaps, you have to decide how to fill them. If they're not in-house available, you have to train, recruit, or outsource. In a consortium, it's more complex because there is the potential to share roles. For example, one retrofit coordinator can operate across the entire consortium. You also need to recognize training your existing staff or recruiting new staff can be slow processes. Training obviously takes time, and recruiting can be slow and difficult if you're looking for someone with unusual skills where there is a shortage in the market. Outsourcing is potentially faster if you can find the right supplier. So basically, this is the process of pulling together the team. Once you have the team assembled, how do we keep all the plates spinning through the project? How can we head off problems, and what can we do when they arise? Communication is critical. You need to keep everyone informed and aligned. And it's hard to keep up. It's very easy to let the focus on communication drop, information doesn't flow properly, and you start to experience problems. You cannot communicate too much. People will tend to lose interest, look away, become involved in their own activities and other activities. Keeping everybody aligned is a major, major task of project management. You also need to be aware of hidden assumptions. People have different ways of working, different expectations, the way we do things around here. And even within a single organization, different teams can have different approaches. I have seen people attend project meetings where clear decisions were made, those decisions were written down, and still people came away from the meeting with a completely different understanding of what had been agreed and what the actions are. That comes from those assumptions about how the work is done and what needs to be done. So communications, again, are critical to keeping the team aligned and keeping them informed. The other thing you need to be aware of is centrifugal force. As people get into their tasks, they get their heads down, focus, and stop paying attention to the rest of the project. And then gradually, the different themes, strands, elements of the project become separated. You can have misunderstandings between them. Different teams can be tackling projects in ways which are incompatible. You need to keep them together and aligned and all pulling in the same direction. So here are a few tools which are useful in complex multi-party projects. Not the usual Gantt charts and project plans, but tools that are about communication and keeping everybody aligned. The first tool is the Project Risk Register. You can use this as a communications and management tool. It's a picture of where the project risks lie now, and it changes as the project evolves. Some risks will be dealt with, some will fade away, some will increase in importance, and new problems will be discovered. There's a tendency in project management to treat the risk register as something which is required for an application for funding or for a business case, and then needs to be reported on quarterly to whoever the funder is. That's to miss the value as a communication tool. It should be a living document, it should be constantly referred to, it should be promulgated throughout the team. It's a quick visualization of what's going well, what's going not so well, and where the real problems lie. The simple red, amber, green color coding makes a one-page visualization of where the project stands and what needs to be done. And the risk register explains what mitigation actions are required and who is responsible for those. That's really valuable information for the whole team. So use the risk register, not just for recording risks, but for communicating the project status and keeping everybody up to speed. Another communications tool is the elevator pitch. You need to be able to talk about the project clearly and persuasively in long and short form, as a document and face-to-face. And the elevator pitch is the absolutely distilled down essence of the project. You know the story. You have a great idea, you meet the CEO in the elevator, and you have 20 seconds between floors to make your case. Not to cover all the detail, but to interest people. You will get the chance for the detail later. Grab their attention first. Marketers have an acronym for the journey you take a buyer on. AIDA, A-I-D-A, attention, interest, desire, action. If you don't grab their attention and pique their interest, it's very difficult to get people to take the actions you want. And this applies to all the teams and functions and suppliers you need for the project, all those stakeholders. You'll be amazed at the number of times I've listened to people with a strong idea spend all their time giving context and history, never getting to the core of the idea. The first thought in your audience's mind when you corner them with your idea is likely to be, why am I listening to this? What problem is this going to solve for me? And fundamentally, do I care? So when you're telling the story of the project to the different members of the team, to the different contractors, suppliers, and the rest of the folk you need to help you, you need to be able to show how it matters and why it matters to them. Now, some people find this thinking cynical, even offensive. The project should sell itself. I'm not a salesman, I'm an expert. Well, sorry, people are human, and there are many people you need to bring on board and keep on board for the project. So how do you think about constructing your elevator pitch? Make sure you cover the important stuff right at the beginning of any conversation or presentation. Be very clear. The problem is, it is important because if only we could, it would solve this issue, enable us to operate in a different way. To do that, we need to be able to. And then the details come later. A classic way of constructing your elevator pitch is to use what's called the inverted pyramid. So you start off with the absolutely core information, few and simple words. Then you introduce the main argument, and then you move on to further detail as required. Think about a typical newspaper article. You have a headline, you have the key takeaways immediately under that, and then you start to get into the real story and ultimately the background. The advantage of this is that you make sure that the key points get across first and only then delve into more detail. If you can hold your project and its status and what you're working on in your head in an inverted pyramid form, you can talk to people for 1 minute, you can talk to people for 15 minutes and hold their attention. The next tool is the RACI chart. It identifies who is responsible for delivering a task, who is accountable for making sure it happens, who needs to be consulted before a decision is made, and who needs to be informed after a decision is made. The responsible people are the ones doing the actual work. It will probably be a small number, a small team perhaps. Ideally, there should be a single named person who is accountable. You need to know where the buck stops. And then a variety of people will need to be consulted and informed depending on the task. So you can map out the tasks and people in a simple graphic or spreadsheet. It sounds trivial, but you will be amazed how often in a project different people think they're accountable or no one's been picked as responsible, key activities where you haven't figured out how they will be delivered. And it's surprising how often people with their heads down delivering forget to consult with the people who will be directly affected by what they're working on, or don't inform people that a change has been made or a task delivered. The RACI chart makes it much easier to map out who is doing what and keep everyone up to speed. It's one of the key tools for helping overcoming that problem of fragmentation as everybody gets on with the day job, with the work they have to do. This next tool addresses the problems of silos. We all recognize the problem. Teams are following their own priorities, information does not flow, there is suspicion, there are not invented here problems, and pretty soon people are communicating by tying notes to a convenient brick and hurling them over the wall into another silo, trying to get noticed, but probably only getting a larger brick coming back the other way. One of the solutions to this problem is the boundary object, something that sits between different groups and helps neutral communications. It can be a mathematical model, a shared project plan, a roadmap, process maps, all kinds of things. But there are some rules. It must be co-invented and collectively owned. All the relevant groups must be involved. A boundary object cannot be created by one team and passed to another. That triggers misunderstanding and not invented here thinking. If it is going to be collectively owned, it ideally should be created in neutral territory. If one group consistently hosts the work, it subtly and progressively becomes theirs. So try and find a workspace outside the participants, have an off-site meeting, or rotate the meetings around different teams, different groups, different consortium members. Choose objects that are persistent. Boundary objects need regular use. They should be poked and prodded, revised and appealed to. And make sure they have real meaning to all the participating groups. Something only important to one team is still important, but it is not a boundary object. I've seen the creation of shared boundary objects take partners at loggerheads, frozen in mutual suspicion and sabotage, and switch a light on, allowing them to make swift progress. So a classic example of a boundary object would be your risk register. This is something which is contributed to by everybody. It's something which is easily shared. It is something which everybody has to react to because it defines the next set of actions in mitigating those risks. So that's a good example of what can easily become a boundary object if you encourage co-creation, co-ownership. In fact, all of your major project documents and project decision processes can be boundary objects, providing you make sure to include people, bring them in, make sure that they are co-owners with you of that particular piece of documentation or planning or whatever. So to wrap up, make sure you have the team to deliver your project effectively. Define the tasks that need to be done, map people to them, perform the gap analysis, and then figure out how you're going to bridge the gaps. Use the list in the appendix of the team toolkit as a starting point for working out what the jobs are. Having got your team together, you must manage them effectively through the project. Communication, communication, communication. I cannot stress too much how important good communications are to holding a team together and getting a successful result. Beware those hidden assumptions. They can trip you up. Don't believe that just because you think you've been clear in explaining something to another team member, another consortium member, a contractor, a supplier, whatever, don't assume that they have heard the same message you think you're giving them. They will filter it through their own world. Use the risk register to monitor the project and communicate the status. Don't see it as a static document and something only for external use. Make it a part of your team discussions. And then use the elevator pitch, the RACI chart and boundary objects to keep people aligned. So that's all I wanted to cover. If there are any questions, you can either email Social Housing Retrofit or you can email me directly and I will try and help you. Thank you very much for your attention.